Who are you? Don't you want to know? Don't you think that if you knew, you would be more at ease with everything? Can we know? They say that we can't know these things on the level of the mind. Well, because on the level of the mind, you are either the son or the father. You're either irrational or rational. You're in the spectrum between rationality and irrationality. And where are you going to go with that? How are you going to understand spiritual concepts? How are you going to understand things that go beyond this body through the rational mind? You can't. You can't. It's impossible. I think a lot of people have tried and failed. It's just the computer is just not strong enough. And you feel it right away. As soon as you ask a question like, who are you really? It's almost like you're trying to play a 2025 video game on a console from 2005. It's just not going to happen. It's too much. It's too vast of a question. But the answer, however, you can still have the answer. Isn't that interesting? You can still understand this. You can still know the answer. You can't hold on to the answer. The rational mind can hold on to information. Information can stick to it and it can hold on to it. Like you hold on to something with your hand, but your awareness, your true self cannot hold on to anything. When you try to hold on to something, you just get mind identified again. So when you think you know something, you're in the dark. When you know that you know nothing, you understand a whole lot more than you ever did. But see, there is a knowing. It's not a holding on to anything, but it's a knowing. It's a self-generated knowledge rather than an acquired knowledge. Now, does it play a part in our lives, this father figure, this rationality that holds on to things? Well, on the physical plane, that's how you operate. But as a personality, and more so a personality connected to that father, or maybe wise mother, if you're a woman, I don't know. But being connected to that rational part of the mind. Rational sounds also a bit dry. Like, we're not talking about like becoming a scientist here. Rational just means that you live life the way you want, unaffected by fear and insecurities. Nothing is holding you back. You're just having a good time, having the best time possible. So what we know for sure is that this craving entity, the child's mind, not the child's mind as you being your creative expression of yourself, but this needy little craving, destructive, insecure entity that you also have to deal with. That you can let go of. That does not serve you. The rational father is how we navigate this world. And the awareness behind that is where the Father is ideally getting his or her knowing. And that knowing can then be interpreted by the Father to the best ability into words that are then being conveyed about truths that go beyond the understanding of the Father. Right? So beyond rationality itself. Maybe it helps you to put this into the context of the levels of consciousness. The child's mind would be anything up until pride. And then from pride and all the way up to rationality. And up until rationality, reason, you would have the Father. You would have this, the wise entity that can act justly and truthfully and righteously and sees things for what they are, says things the way they are, even if you don't like hearing them. Reals over feels. And also the levels of go out and do it, and planning and strategy and masculinity and making things happen, right? All these things. And then from level 400, or from the level of reason and above that, that is the awareness. That is the true self. And some people skip that little level of masculinity. To understand that better, you should look at the spiral dynamics, integral levels. There it becomes very obvious that a lot of people who skip the masculine levels, and the spiritual people, all that, they tend to go back later on in life because they have this missing piece of the puzzle. It becomes easier to do it, right? It becomes easier to navigate the world of, the rationality, the go get it, and all that. But we can't skip levels. We have to have experienced all of them and know what they are to their full capacity. That's why a lot of people say that life feels like a school sometimes. It's like, oh, there is this class and this class, and then some people, they skip a class. They go straight to the highest truth. I just want to know the highest truth, what's out there, and that's good. But then to navigate this world as a human being, not just a being, but also a human, you have to also understand, math class, basically, right? You went straight to art class, and to the spiritual artist, math is easy and sometimes even tedious and boring. Not because it's there's something wrong with it, but just because it's not a challenge. It's not a challenge for a spiritual person to start a business, basically, or get gains in the gym, or be in a calorie deficit, get a better body, or whatever it may be. Like any of these things that require discipline and grit and masculinity. It's a bit like how Coolio said that to a singer, rapping is easy. Yeah. I don't know if that's true. I'm not a musician, but yeah. So that's the father, right? That's the father of this, and that father, it can be molded, right? Just like a personality, right? Just like a person, you can mold that, um, and it becomes much stronger, obviously, when it's powered by awareness, when it's powered by spirituality. You can create a very, very strong father part of the mind. And again, father sounds like this very reasonable entity, like, oh, I'm just a father, I just go to work and I come back and I sleep kind of aura. But it's really just, that moment of clarity when you're just like, rationality can be dancing, rationality can be having fun, rationality can be going against the mind, or so it feels, right? You're just going against that negative entity inside the mind. You're going against the doubt, the fear, the uncertainty, the imposter syndrome. But there is a level deeper than that, and that is the awareness that is aware of the Father, that is aware of that which is aware of the negativity and the positivity, for that matter. Right? That would be mostly the Father, right? So you're aware that there is an awareness, basically. And then can you navigate this world as pure awareness? Let's say you make YouTube videos. Well, someone still had to press record. And awareness is not going to do it. So there is a codependency. However, when we speak, we can speak from awareness, right? To the best capacity. There's always going to be that mediator, which is the human mind, the way you choose to formulate words. Yeah, you're taking a knowledge, a knowing that does not contain any words, and then you're just trying to put words on it. And the words you choose depend entirely on your personality, right? In this world. Your culture, your favorite teachers, your artistic expression. So let's try to do a little meditation and get familiar with that awareness and get a taste for what it is. And the way we meditate is not like close your eyes. You can do that, but and I used to do it. I used to do it in the beginning. I was close my eyes every single time. But yeah, it doesn't matter. You can close your eyes if it helps you. And so You want to observe the thinking. You can let your eyes wander in the room, or keep them closed, but what's important is that you observe the thinking. And when things are still, when there are no thoughts, observe that as well. What is that like? Pretty soon you should be getting to a point where you experience boredom. Both in thought but also in feeling. It's like this feeling that something has to happen. You have to do something. But right now we're getting familiar with the awareness, so that is what we are doing. It can seem so simple that it feels like a worthless activity. But it's the only activity actually worth something. Everything else is just a desperate attempt to find that which we are now connecting to directly. Isn't it great when things are just still? Isn't it ironic that we go around life, we're chasing all these things, but the best feeling is just inner silence, just inner emptiness, quietness. And you already feel whole and complete, you already feel good. Just by being in this stillness, you are experiencing all your bodily sensations and you feel good. You feel free. You realize that every single layer of the mind is not real. So whatever it is that you were thinking or whatever thoughts came to you, and it's not real. It doesn't have any power. This personal entity, it wants to stay alive, obviously. Just like any other biological organism, right? It's trying to stay alive. It's just a reflex. And that very, very primal reflex become expressed as quite complicated and intricate sentences. That's interesting. These very, very primal and primitive mechanisms become expressed as the ego's tricks to get your attention, to get you hooked, to get your mind identified. And with time we recognize that that is just always going to be there. Whenever we say something that speaks to this higher reality, then the ego tries to contradict that with a counter thought, a counter argument, trying to stir up a discussion. And this also manifests in other people, right? Trying to stir up a discussion. But with time, this gets easier and easier to deal with because it's very repetitive. Again, the mind is a very, very primitive machine. Okay, it's a 2005 console. It's still more complicated than any quantum computer today or any language model. But it's compared to the awareness, your higher intelligence is very, very primitive, very repetitive. And what you find is that the awareness is also repetitive. I want to say inquisition. And it's a repetitive knowing every time, but you never get tired of this taste. Never. Like, it's always going to excite you every single time, every single day. Becoming familiar with that awareness. So there is no better way to spend your time than to become familiar with that awareness. And then you just have to choose doings in your life that accommodates that as much as possible. Like for me, it's making these videos. That's just one way, right? But I guess there's a million ways that you can navigate this world while, in fact, it's actually quite challenging to find an activity where you're not in a position to practice your own awareness, your own consciousness. Maybe when you're around very unconscious people, that can feel very draining. But I mean, eventually that just sorts itself out anyway, right? Like attracts like, but at the same time, like repulses dislike, and the other way around, on an energetic level. So you find yourself with people who are unconscious, and you're someone who's conscious, then you're going to be like, you're not going to stay together for long. You're going to go your separate ways. The same with everything else that carries energetic frequency. Like music, for example. Like music also has energetic frequency, or more specifically, artists. And more specifically than that, different songs. So you might have one artist who makes different songs that calibrate in different levels. Sometimes intentionally. Sometimes, as an artist, you maybe want to speak to one audience on one calibration, and then to another audience on a different calibration. But you will attract more and more so music that calibrates on your level, people, digital content, activities. Your whole life is more or less a representation of your level of consciousness. So if you're in doubt about where you calibrate, you can just look at the things that occupy your day, and you will know. And if you have spiritual ambitions, if that's a real thing, then you will notice a big difference when you let go of certain frequencies. When you let go of negative people in your life, you're removing the roadblocks. So that's another way to look at this. If you just remove enough roadblocks, your level will rise. You will naturally become more aware and conscious. But what will then happen is that the same ego entity will re-emerge. Because you haven't learned to deal with that. You've just created a very good environment for consciousness to be there. So you will still find that the ego will come back around and show you tricks that you haven't seen before. And you have to learn to deal with these tricks. That's inevitable. But letting go of negative influences can accelerate the process and make it all come to you faster. And then there will be times when you might be going so fast that you can't really keep up anymore. And then you might have to just surrender to what's going on again and, do what the more rational part of your mind wants. Again, so when you do get mind identified, when you are in a position where you have to navigate this world with your mind, with your personality, and then just make sure to check yourself that you're acting from the most rational place you can, because then you're still calibrating at a pretty high level. Higher than most people, actually. David R. Hawkins said that most people calibrate, like the average calibration is, at the time of writing his book, around 200, right? So just around pride, or in between pride and courage. And it makes sense, the average person has a fair share of pride and just enough courage to create cracks in the mask to invite consciousness in. David R. Hawkins said that Nobel Prize winners, the scientists, very, very acclaimed scientists, they hold a calibration of around 400. And that's the peak of rationality. So you see, if you can, on your bad days, if you can just remain rational, you're still calibrating at the level of Nobel Prize winners. You can still be someone who is doing good things in this world, even as mind identified. So or I guess as navigating the mind, if you're identified to that father figure, if you think that's who you are, well, then the advice would be, to be yourself. Always, unconditionally, be yourself. So you see, it depends on what level people are at. If someone is totally mind identified, it's like speaking to an impatient child. And I don't even know how you do that. That's, some people are good at that. I have not really been very good with that, ever. I don't know how to deal with people who are identified to the irrational part of their minds. It's a very heavy energetic level, and I personally try to avoid that as much as possible. Unless these people come to me and they are asking for advice or whatever, but even then, you have to really be conscious and present and see if it's really asking for advice or asking for validation. And these things can be worded the exact same way. And one is very emotionally draining, and the other one is very rewarding on a spiritual level. Because if someone is genuinely asking for advice, if they're genuinely inquiring about raising their level of consciousness, then it's like helping yourself. It's like helping a different incarnation of yourself. And that's what it really comes down to, right? Spirituality, it's like it's about obviously in the beginning it's about just you, just do your thing, but inevitably you will want to to offer what you can to other people as well, to share this. And or at the very least, just put them out. Like, put these things out. You're not. I'm not like knocking on people's doors and saying, "Oh, you have to wake up" or whatever. I tried that for a while in the beginning, and that caused more problems for me than it did good for the people I tried to convince. And sometimes it can work. It can work to literally force people to awaken. But the moment you are out of the picture in their lives, they go back to their old ways. They go back to whatever class they hadn't finished, and they just continue in that class. So it's you can't really force your way. All you can really do is just put these things out there. Maybe on YouTube, and then the right people will find them at the right time. And then people who do inquire about these things, well, obviously you can then guide them in the right way, but that's way less coaching than in other fields. So in other fields, you might have a coaching program or a mentor who is always there for you 24/7, but with these spiritual concepts, it's obviously it can help to have a teacher on a consistent basis, but everything is digital anyway, right? So you can talk to someone in the real world for 15 minutes. They will say something that you can use for the rest of your life. And then to support your process, you're just using content from the internet. Now, that's more or less my story. I had this strong urge to find someone who was enlightened some years ago, and I believe that I found someone, and they talked to me for 15 minutes, and even though it's been 8 years or something, I'm still unpacking the knowledge that I received in those 15 years up until this day. In the beginning I was like, I'm not sure what this means, but then 3 years later, oh, now that part of the sentence makes sense. Oh, okay. And then 5 years later, okay, now I understand this part. And then like 8 years later, you're like, oh wow, that part was so profound. Yeah, and then suffering also, is a good teacher in this process. Just letting life happen, right? Just it's a pretty solid strategy. Just letting life happen to you. Okay, you have cravings. Indulge. See what happens. Okay, then you start suffering. Okay, what happens then? You want to find a way out of it. Okay, what happens then? Okay, you go back to your spiritual practice. Okay, cool. Okay, and why does that help? Oh, because you become disidentified from the craving entity. Okay, cool. You learn something. That was one cycle. Now you just continue letting go. You continue going through these cycles, and eventually you choose your side. You could say you choose your side, right? Do you choose this mind personality, or do you choose this awareness? Which one are you more interested in? And in the beginning, it's a bit of both, right? It's like, oh, now with this group of friends, I will be my personality, and with this spiritual person, I will be more spiritual, and I just love both of it in their own way. And that, it can be like that. It can be a bit confusing in the beginning. Because you literally go from being in, more or less one mind, and this mind has sort of, like, how like in those kids movies you have the good angel and the bad angel. So the bad angel would be the child mind, the irrational, and then the good angel would be the rational. So the irrational is like, oh, let's just sit here and watch Netflix and eat pizza. And then the rational is like, no, you have goals for this year, get back to it, you promised yourself, whatever. And then you introduce spirituality into your life, and now it's almost like there is this third player in the mix. Now you're like, okay, so both of these were not real. And you see, so there's a lot of stories that you've been accumulating over your whole life that you now have to let go of, bit by bit, right? So every single day you will find that you wake up and every day you have to let go of something new. And even when you feel like you've let go of everything, then you just start accumulating new things that you also have to let go of on a continuous basis. So there's always something to let go of in terms of these rational, irrational two minds here. And but yeah, just remember that as long as you are just, sided with the more rational part of your mind, you're still good. You're still benefiting this world. Everything above the level of courage, everything in 250 and above, are still amplifying each other and improving each other. So even someone who's, in the level 300, if they get together with someone who's in the 600, they are both improving from the relationship. Everything in positivity is multiplying itself into more positivity, you would say.